Hey. Okay, this one is going to be an update video. And typically, at least for the last several videos, they've been create. But I do want to do an update one so we see what this looks like. I was recently, as in this weekend, working on a new setup for F5XC, which required me to turn on this flag. And the flag was to trust X forwarded for headers. But when I did that, it was great in the console. But of course, after the console, I went to go commit that into code. And when I committed it into code, everything broke. So I'm going to go through what happened and show how I did my update. Also, you can see the option that I changed and what it looks like inside the pipelines. So looking at it first, this was a failed pipeline deployment. And I had gone in and under my code, I wanted to add this new feature flag. So under distributed cloud and then under configuration, and then under this discovery load balancer, I wanted to flag this option which would allow me to trust proxies. So I triggered it in here. I also tested it in the console and it was working. But when I triggered it in here and I went to commit, my pipeline blew up. And that's what you saw just a second ago. So what happened when my pipeline blew up? And then what I'm going to do from here on out, which is, a testing of how we should do some, let's say, code changes. So under this one, we saw that fail. And what happened is under Terraform, I came in here and I looked at the failure and it just spit out all of these errors, which were new to me. So the day before, everything was working. I fired this off this weekend and it failed. And in here, it's throwing out these things like cluster blocks are now required and port ranges. I understand what the port ranges are. I don't quite understand what the cluster blocks are. But this led me to okay, what's going on with Terraform question. And I had previously been working on every version of Terraform, like every latest version. And this is the latest conundrum that everybody else has as well. So I was using the latest, and I do that on purpose because I would like to see things happen before a customer may ask me if something is going to happen. So I was using the latest and it failed. It had jumped up to 1127 and it initialized, but then it threw me all these errors. And I went, okay, I need to go see if there was an update. So then I went back over to the Terraform docs. Sure enough, the latest one is 1127. And then I went over to the released pages and that 1127 came out 2 days ago. So I know there's something that changed between 1126 and 1127. I would expect that I wouldn't have breaking changes. It would be backwards compatible, but I don't know for sure. And the only real way to know would be to open an issue. So what I did is I went and I created an issue for the same problem. So my issue is going to be this one, and we're going to submit this right now. So this is how I would create one. I'd go to the Terraform provider. I'd go create an issue. My provider fails with 1127. You guys can check this. 1126 works fine, and then this one's failing on a 27. So this would be the normal method for me to interact with F5 for this piece of code. This wouldn't be a support ticket because this is provided through the Terraform provider, and I don't need to have a support ticket to do that. Now I could escalate with a support ticket if this was like a production level environment, but because Terraform I can roll back, and I'll show you how I do that, allows me to continue on. So I'm gonna go ahead and submit this because I do think it's a problem. So I'll submit the issue and I'll put that in chat in case anybody wants to see that later, or chat or notes or whatever it is in YouTube. All right, so now I know that there was a release 1127. I know it was working before 2 days ago. I submitted my issue. I found the docs. I could definitely read about the release notes, but a lot of this is going to be highly detailed and I'm not quite sure what each of those are. So I'm opening that GitHub issue to find out if it's expected behavior or not, and should I be updating my code. So this failed, but I need a way to revert. And the way this is configured in my environment is each one of these are their own provider. So I can test how the provider's working, how Terraform's working on its Terraform version, how maybe that tool specific to it, the product is working as well. And I can jump between different versions. So now I have this issue. I'm gonna go back to my code. And then if I'm looking in my code for this, again, wrong one, distributed cloud, all right, and then Terraform, this was configuration changes. So now my provider lives down here. And we can see that I set the provider now back to 1126. And if you're unfamiliar with these little notations, this is the less than or equal to, right? So you can have an equal to version, a greater than version, and a less than version. And I know that 1126 passes, so I'm gonna go make sure after I change this, I'm gonna run it again, and we'll go see what that looks like as 1126. But now what this is gonna do is it's gonna stop essentially any new version of Terraform running, so I don't upgrade to those versions when my pipeline's running. And I want that in place now with the issue open. But as soon as the issue's resolved, or I figure out if I actually do need to update my code, then I'm gonna swap this back to always running the latest, so every job that I run gets a latest edition of it, and I can trigger these events, and I'm preparing myself for whether or not a customer's gonna run into them. So, switched back to 1126. I'm gonna go, I've already ran it, so we're gonna kind of jump through and see what that looked like. So jumping it back to 1126, and then I can go look at that one particular job, which is the Terraform for XC configuration, and we can see that it inits at 1126, and then everything passes. So at this point, I'm frozen. This may be a good note for you guys to freeze or choose a latest or choose a gold standard for what your Terraform releases are, right? I have an issue open, and that's the best way for me to interact with F5 support, right? All around the Terraform module for XE. And then once I get some more information around that, will provide me enough information to update my Terraform code so that I'm pulling the latest things in. So this was an update, which is different than the other ones. If you're poking around within the environment provider, I do, like I said, a provider for each one of these, and that lets me specify the version of Terraform. Inside the GitHub action, it lets me, or I guess it lets me specify the version of the resource. Inside the GitHub actions, it lets me specify the Terraform version, so I can actually run different Terraform versions with different provider levels across all different ones of these workflows. And that gives me things like proactive, right, environments in here. Now I have seen people that run actions just on a timing loop, so that way they know, like, okay, something's gonna break, or they see something like there was a release, a package release, and then they trigger it. So there are some different ways to do this, but I like doing it this way because I wanna make sure that I'm on a functional version and I have a ticket open if I need to. As always, I wish everybody good luck. Have a great day.